Jaya Shriman Narayana. Jaya Shriman Narayana. Jaya Shriman Narayana. Very good. Wonderful. Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to our weekly live stream. For those who are not aware of what you're watching, this is the Dharma Nation channel on YouTube. My name is Dharma Pravartaka Acharya, sometimes referred to either as Acharya Ji or sometimes simply Acharya. And I want to welcome you all here for this weekly broadcast. As those of you who have been following us know, for the last several weeks, specifically since the great lockdown of 2020 has occurred, we decided to start doing a weekly live stream. And the reason why is several. First of all, because it's very much needed at this time in history. We know that there are many people who are out there who are feeling very alone, very panicked, very fearful right now about everything that's happening in the world around. And one of the primary purposes of doing this weekly live broadcast is to assure you that indeed there is nothing to fear. Indeed, as Sri Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, verse 66, he says, Ma shuchaha, do not fear. And how interesting is it that he said this, he three words, do not fear, over 5,100 years ago. Over 5,100 years ago, quite a long time ago. And despite the fact that he said this so long ago, it applies quite literally to this exact second in our history, where so many people indeed are so confused and fearful and wondering, what is going to happen with this entire COVID-19 crisis? And then, of course, all of the other crises that also are occurring behind the scenes that some may or may not be aware of. But are we to survive this? Are we going to survive this? What will the world look like when this is all over? People are just so fearful of so many different questions like this. And as I have been trying to explain to people, as I've said for quite a long time now, at least a month or two since this entire thing began, number one, this is going to be over sooner than you think. And looking at all the various news sources, looking at the press conferences, the daily briefings that President Trump has been giving, etc., it does indeed seem that that is going to be the case, that this is indeed going to be over within at this point. Meaning that the lockdown will be over, businesses will resume their business, the economy will resume again, etc., etc. Things will start to get back to normal very, very soon. Again, probably within weeks. And now it's many, many people across the spectrum who are indeed confirming that this is the case. So that's the first thing. The second thing is also this. As far as what the world will look like when this is all over and done with, the world will indeed be a better place. Now, when I say that, of course, it doesn't mean that the day after the lockdown is over necessarily. That's not how nature progresses. That's not how anything that is of importance proceeds. There are no instantaneous occurrences like this, at least very rarely. But rather, what we know is that little by little, after this is over, things are going to get better. It will be faster than we expect. However, again, it's not going to be instantaneous. For anyone who has watched my videos and who knows how I speak about things, I've always assured people of this, that transitions in ages do not come about in the snap of a finger. Rather, they take a little bit of time. So in the same way, when this is all over, we're going to be living in a better world. It will take a little bit of time. It's going to happen quicker than we think. But our world will be better for this. So again, this is what's important. Have hope, have faith, understand that God is with you at all times, And even during this very trying, very confusing time, God is with you. You are not alone in any way whatsoever. And just know everything is going to be good in the end. So with that, what we're going to do today, how we're going to proceed, is how I do things, and that is by basing everything upon scriptures, upon the Vedic scriptures very specifically. We are followers of Sanatana Dharma, what is called Sanatana Dharma, sometimes known as the Vedic tradition. Sanatana Dharma itself, those two words mean the eternal natural way. And as followers of Sanatana Dharma, everything that we believe, everything we know to be the case, as well as how we live, is based upon what are called the Vedic scriptures, the Vedic scriptures of Sanatana Dharma. That being the case, with almost all of my talks, I tend to base my talks on what I call exegetical analysis. That is, looking at various verses from the Vedic scriptures and unpacking them, doing a commentary, an analysis on these Vedic scriptures. And as we've seen in the past, the nectar of instruction that we get from these Vedic scriptures is incomparable. There is no better guide to life, the Vedic scriptures. So that being the case, I'm going to be talking about two specific verses today that are tied together. They're actually two essential verses, and this is from Mundaka Upanishad, from a specific scriptural text known as Mundaka Upanishad. So I will read these, and I'll do one at a time actually, but I will first read these and then comment on them. Afterwards, I will do my best to leave a nice amount of time for questions and answers. I try to leave at least 25 minutes in this 1 hour segment for questions and answers, because I know that there are so many people who have very, very good questions, and I'd like to leave time for that. But in the meantime, if you do have questions, as always, I ask that you please wait, that you don't ask the questions right now, because I'm not going to see them if you ask them now. Rather, I'll let you know when my talk is over. I'll let you know now is the time to ask questions, and I'll do my best to answer as many as possible. So with that, let's go on to the Mundaka Upanishad, and we're going to start with Mundaka Upanishad 1, 2, 12. This is the verse, and it proceeds as follows. Let a brahmana, that is a sagely person, after having examined all these worlds that are gained by works, acquire freedom from desires, nothing that is eternal can be produced by what is not eternal. Let me read that again. Nothing that is eternal can be produced by what is not eternal. In order that he may understand that eternal, let him, fuel in hand, approach a guru who is well versed in the Vedas and always devoted to Brahman, or God. All right, that's the first verse that we're going to cover today. And before we go to the second one, I want to unpack this one a little bit, because, again, these are very, very instructional verses. And these two verses very specifically talk about really what is the relationship between the spiritual seeker, the disciple, the student on the one hand, and the guru, or the spiritual master, on the other. That's what these two verses are about. So it's interesting, when speaking about the topic of guru, very often the discussion centers upon what are the qualifications of a guru. That is, what makes a guru a legitimate guru. And that's a very important topic. And again, there are many, many, many Vedic scriptures, many verses that talk about this topic. However, it is very rarely discussed from this perspective, and that is, what are the qualifications of an individual who is a guru? And that is very much what this verse is talking about. Because again, in the relationship between student and guru, it's a two-way street. There are two individuals involved. So certainly, without doubt, the guru has to be qualified. And as far as what those qualifications are, a little bit later, we do go into that in the second verse. But there is an abundance of about what is a true guru. For individuals who think that this is open to debate or speculation, it's not. A true guru has to fit certain criteria. And again, that's found in the scriptures. In several of our videos, we discuss this very, very in depth, what a guru truly is. But again, it's rare that someone actually asks, well, what about the student? How do you know if a student is qualified? Well, that's what this verse is talking about. So let's look at this verse a little bit. First of all, let a brahmana, or a sagely person, let's stop there. Now, why does the Mundaka Upanishad mention specifically a brahmana? Well, what is a brahmana? Of course, some individuals will understand the idea of a brahmana from, let's say, a caste perspective, which is not the proper way of understanding this. Rather, what a brahmana is an individual who is qualified to know Brahman, or God. See, these two words, of course, hearing them, they're linked. Brahman is one of the names of God. It's somewhat more of an impersonal, philosophical name for God in the abstract, but still, it's pointing to God. Now, an individual who wishes to truly know Brahman, or God, that person is called a brahmana, or an individual who inherently, innately is a spiritual person, is a person who is moral, who is good, who is virtuous, who is sincere, who is philosophical, intelligent, who has purity and good virtues, etc., etc. Any individual who has those qualities, and several more that I can mention as well, but that's a good starter. An individual who has those qualities is called a brahmana, or one who is qualified to know Brahman, to know God. So that being said, let's go on. Let a brahmana, or a person, after having examined these worlds that are gained by works. Now, this is interesting. Who ultimately really is a spiritual seeker in the true sense? And when I say who is a spiritual seeker, I don't mean merely who is that individual who claims to be a spiritual seeker. Because you see, unfortunately, this is one of the problems that we encounter today, is that there are so many millions of people who claim that they're spiritual seekers, but their level of sincerity will vary from one to another. Simply because one claims, oh, I am a spiritual seeker, in other words, that doesn't mean that they are necessarily sincerely so. You know, it's easy to say, oh, I am a spiritual seeker. But to truly be an individual who yearns to know God and is willing to give of himself and sacrifice of himself to truly know God, that's a more rare thing, actually. So of all those individuals who say, I'm a spiritual seeker, truthfully, a minority of them truly are. Now, how do we know a true spiritual seeker? Well, this little clause gives us a little bit of a clue. A spiritual seeker is someone who has examined the world already. They have lived many lives. They have had many experiences in this world, both good and bad. And now, finally, having exhausted all of their attempts to enjoy life materially, after exhausting all of their attempts to exorcise their ego in this world as much as possible, now it gets to the point where they finally realize, all right, I've experienced the things that this world has to offer, and in a way, I'm exhausted of this. I'm exhausted with materialism. And now, finally, with sincerity, with an open mind and an open heart, with humility, with devotion, I am now ready to truly inquire into the nature of God. You see, only such an individual is truly worthy of knowing a Satguru, a true guru. You know, it's interesting how so many people, I want a guru, I want a guru. But what reveals the true guru to an individual is not merely the words that I want a guru, but rather, again, those actions and that behavior, such that you make yourself worthy of finding a true teacher. So, let's go on. Let a brahmana, a sagely person, after having examined all these worlds that are gained by works, acquire freedom from desires. So, now this last clause, very important. An individual who truly wants to know God and know truth has to free themselves from desires for anything else. Now, this is not to say that, of course, you become truly desireless to the point of being a robot. No, what it means is that you assess what is true desire. That is, you understand that there are materialistic desires, there are selfish desires, there are self-centered desires, but then there are those desires that, on the other hand, will deliver to us truth. So, for example, very often people will make the mistake of, just in a very generic sort of way, saying, oh, I want all desire. Well, all right. But in saying that you desire to transcend all desire, you're desiring, and is that a bad desire? So you see, when we say, as another example, oh, I desire to know God, well, is that a material desire? No, it's not. If we say, I desire to know truth and to surrender my life to truth, is that a materialistic desire? No, that's a spiritual desire. So there's a distinction between the two. We are to rid ourselves of all materialistic, selfish, ego-driven desires if we truly want to know truth and to approach a guru as a student. That's what this is saying. And then, as a ending to this section of this verse, very, very powerful sentence. Nothing that is eternal can be produced by what is not eternal. Let me repeat that one more time. Nothing that is eternal can be produced by what is not eternal. In other words, if we truly want to know the eternal, if we truly want to know what we claim that we want to know, and that is truth with a capital T, if we want to know our true selves, God, etc., well, then we are to turn to that which is likewise, not that which is its opposite. There is nothing temporary. There is nothing within the material world. There is nothing that is of the nature of untruth that will reveal truth to us. There is nothing that is temporary that will give us the eternal. Rather, how do we know the eternal? It's by turning to the eternal. That's what this clause is saying. Now let's go on with this verse. In order that he may understand that eternal, let him, fuel in hand, approach a guru. Let me stop there for a second. In order that he may understand that eternal. So again, continuation of what we were just saying. So if you truly want to understand that eternal, well, what do? Well, let that person, fuel in hand, approach a guru. Now, this is very interesting. For those individuals who don't understand traditional Vedic culture, this may sound a little bit confusing. What is meant by fuel in hand? Why would you approach a guru with fuel? This doesn't make sense in the year 2020. So let me just talk about that a little bit, and so that you'll see that the Vedic scriptures are never mistaken in what they say. We may not understand for right now what something is trying to explain to us in the Vedic scriptures, but that doesn't mean that the Vedic scriptures are not in themselves perfect in their knowledge. So what is meant by this? Well, traditionally, when an individual approached a guru, first of all, you went to the guru's ashram, and this usually would be deep in a talking about. Very good. So hopefully, I believe we're back now. And just to confirm, unfortunately, we had a little bit of a problem. So if people can please just confirm for me that you are hearing and seeing me, I would appreciate it. And I won't. I won't resume my talk until I get a few confirmations that we're back. Again, nothing on our end. Someone's saying, just reloaded the video, but it's frozen at the same spot. Frozen. I have one yes, one confirmation. I just want to wait until there are a few more confirmations that everything is working again. All right, we are back online. Very good. Wonderful. Well, let me, first of all, assure people it's nothing on our end. Everything is working fine here. Very good. Thank you very much, everyone, for confirming that we're live again. Wonderful. There's no problem on our end. If anyone is doing something to stop this live stream, it's, again, not on our end. It's simply deep state shenanigans, let us just say. But again, hopefully everyone can hear. And again, my apologies. Let us resume. So the fuel in hand. The last thing I want to say about that is it's also, again, very much symbolic that when you approach the guru, you make an offering, just like you make an offering to anything or anyone sacred. If you approach God, you make an offering. You bring, if you go to the temple, for example, you bring some flowers, you bring some fruit, you bring something to leave on the altar as symbolic of your devotion. So that being said, let's go on. All right. So let him, fuel in hand, approach a guru. Now this part is very important. Who is well versed in the Vedas and always devoted to Brahman or God. And that ends this verse. Now this last clause is very important because now it begins to explain some of the qualifications of what truly is a guru. And here it gives two. So let me talk about this. What is a true guru? Well, according to the Mundaka Upanishad, not Oprah Winfrey, not Marianne Williamson, not some New Age fraud, but according to ancient Vedic scriptures that were revealed by rishis. This says a true guru is well versed in the Vedas. Let's stop there. Now, it is very, very important to understand this from an epistemological perspective. And that is that if an individual is going to claim that they are specifically, and they use any of these terms, a guru, an acharya, a swami, etc., and that they are thus representing the Vedic tradition, it is of crucial importance that when they are teaching, that you have the ability to ask them, where are you getting this information? Is this information that is derived from a lifetime of studying the Vedic scriptures? Or is it something you're making up? Is it something that you're claiming is sort of intuitive revelation that's just coming to you? Is it something that you heard from someone else? And then more, is that person qualified, etc., etc.? So it's very important. If an individual claims to be a guru, their sources of information are several. Number one, the Vedic scriptures. What they say and what they teach must be the exact same message as that which is found in the four Vedas, in the Brahmanas, in the Aranyakas, in the Upanishads, in Mahabharata, Ramayana, in Bhagavad Gita, in all of the sutra literature, etc., etc. Also, it has to be teachings that were repeated by previous acharyas, previous legitimate gurus, going back, stretching back, literally to the beginning of time. If an individual claims to be a guru, and they'll say any sort of statement like this, oh, what I'm teaching is not necessarily from the Vedas, oh, but it doesn't matter because blah, blah, blah. Or if they claim, oh yes, this is something new that no one in the history of spirituality has known before, but I blah, blah, blah. And you get the picture. If they say anything like this, by definition, that individual, however they look, however they're dressed, whatever fancy Sanskrit name they gave to themselves, that person is a fraud. A true guru derives their knowledge from the Vedic scriptures and from previous legitimate acharyas, gurus, rishis, etc. So this is important. This is why this is said here. A guru is well versed in the Vedas. And then second, and always devoted to God. Always devoted to God. So why these two? Why these two things specifically? Well, jnana and bhakti. Jnana and bhakti both have to be there in an individual who claims to be a guru. In other words, they have to be a person who they have the knowledge, and it's perfect knowledge. A true guru can answer any legitimate philosophical question, period. And they truly answer it, and they can answer it in depth. They don't give a pat answer, a feel-good answer. They don't give some wishy-washy generic answer, oh, well, but it's because it's all consciousness. And they stop there. No, they give a real answer. And it's an answer which, if you yourself study the Vedic scriptures, you will see that their answer is confirmed by the Vedic scriptures. So, in addition to jnana, that is knowledge, they also have to have bhakti, They have to have devotion to God. So head and heart have to be there in the guru. They have to be an individual who they are a supreme philosopher, but also they are supremely in love with God. Verus philosophus est amatore Dei, said St. Augustine. The true philosopher is the lover of God, and that's a guru. Now, that being said, let's go on, please, to the second verse that I want to look at today. And it's the next verse. It's the next verse in sequence. So it's a continuation of the same thought that we had just read. But this is Mundaka Upanishad 1, 2, 13. Verse 1, 2, 13. And I will read it now. To that pupil who has duly approached him, whose mind is completely serene and whose senses are controlled, the wise teacher should indeed rightly impart the knowledge of Brahman, or of God, through which one knows the immutable and true Supreme Person. So, beautiful continuation of what we were just reading in the previous verse. So again, let's go through this a little bit quickly because again, I want to leave ample time for questions and answers. So, to that pupil who has duly approached him, that is, to that pupil, to that student who has approached in the right way, that is, in the way that was just described in the previous verse. And what does that mean? Well, that means with humility, sincerity, with detachment from the material world, etc. In other words, the pupil who is truly sincere. Not just one who claims to be, but one who truly is willing to do what is necessary to know truth. So, to that pupil who has duly approached him, now it begins to describe what are the qualifications of that guru. So, now the next clause. Him, that is the guru, whose mind is completely serene and whose senses are controlled. Let's stop there for a moment. So now again, it's going even deeper into what is the nature of a true guru, of a true spiritual master. So first, whose mind is completely serene. You know, when you encounter an individual who is a truly spiritual person, what you encounter is someone whose mind is not agitated. What you encounter is a person whose mind is fixed upon the absolute in such a way that that person has clarity of thought. See, this is something that people are missing, especially today. When I say today, roughly, we could say especially since the internet era. Since the internet era, and I've had this discussion with many, many people, including many of my students, it's a very unfortunate thing that discursive thinking, that is being able to think with discrimination, being able to think with discernment, etc., has become something that is increasingly a challenge for people in the last, roughly 25 years or so. You know, people's minds are not at ease. People's minds are very agitated today. Well, how do you know an individual who is a true guru? This is one way, in that their mind is at peace, their mind is serene, their mind is equipoised. They have the ability that you can ask them a question, and again, without ego, in complete peace, they will give you the true answer. So a guru is an individual who is peaceful, who is not agitated. A true guru is an individual who has the ability to speak upon truth for 2 hours straight. And then, when his task is done, and he has done his duty, he can simply be in silence. It's a true guru. So, let's go on to this second qualification. And whose senses are controlled. This is important. This is extreme. Again, not to speak so much about the negative, that is, fraudulent individuals who today claim to be spiritual teachers, but we have to say this. There are so many individuals who claim to be spiritual teachers, but they have no control over their senses. What does that mean? It means that they do not have the ability to live the lifestyle of a rishi, of a yogi, of a true guru, of an individual who is a sage. When you are a sage, when you are an individual who is spiritually advanced, and again, we're talking about the guru here, who by default has to be an individual who is not just spiritually advanced, but the most advanced. When you are such an individual, well, what does this mean? It means you have complete control over your senses. It means you have no addictions. And let me just say this straightforward, because so few other teachers ever do. If you are a guru, you don't smoke. You don't smoke. You don't smoke tobacco. You don't smoke anything. If you're a true guru, you don't take drugs. If you're a true guru, you don't drink alcohol. If you are a true guru, you have sexual fidelity. That means you do not sleep around. Rather, you have complete control over yourself sexually. And if you do not, don't pretend that you are a guru. And on and on. A true guru is a vegetarian. There's no such thing as a sattvika guru who is not a vegetarian. You have control over your appetites. You have control over what you put into your mouth and what comes out of your mouth. You have control over the senses. That is a true guru. They have the ability to live in simplicity because all that they need to truly feed themselves is God, is the love of God. Thus, they have control over their senses. Now, let's go on a little bit more. The wise teacher should indeed rightly impart the knowledge of Brahman. Let's stop this clause. You see how this is a wonderful verse. Again, for those individuals who will ask this question, oh, how do I know what a real guru is, etc., which is a legitimate question. What is not legitimate, however, is to pretend that the answer is not there. The answer is there, not just with this verse, but let me assure you, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of verses where the qualifications of a true guru are described, and they are there in the Vedic scriptures. I've talked about them in the past. This is another one we will talk about more in the future. But, very important, a wise teacher, the wise teacher, should indeed rightly impart knowledge of Brahman. This is the, let's say, for lack of a better term, this is the job description, this is the career, this is the calling, this is the mission. An individual who is a true guru, that is, they impart knowledge about God. This is what they do. This is what they live. This is what they breathe. This is what motivates them from the moment that they wake up in the morning until the moment that they go to sleep at night. And even when they're sleeping within the realm of dreams, they are still teaching. That's a true guru. That is their mission. And simply teaching speculation? No, by definition, by default, of course. By implication, they are teaching absolute truth. Not just their own speculations about, oh, what is the nature of God? Oh, let me see. Well, I think this, I think that. No. Again, they impart what is there in the Vedic scriptures and what they have learned from their guru, who has learned from his guru, and his guru stretching back to the beginning of time. That's what a true guru does. They rightly impart the knowledge of Brahman, of God. And now speaking about that knowledge we'll go on to the very last clause here. So that knowledge through which one knows the immutable and the true supreme person. So it is through this knowledge, true knowledge imparted by the true guru, that an individual knows the immutable. We're talking about God now. God is immutable. In other words, the opposite of everything that we have experienced within the material realm. Everything within the material realm is very much mutable, is very much in transition, is very much temporary. Everything in the material world, including our own physical bodies, come into being, are here for time, decay, and then disappear. Well, we're not talking about knowledge of such things. Rather, we're talking about that immutable supreme person. We're talking about God who is eternal, and everything related to God, which also are eternal, such as actual truth, dharma, etc. So through this knowledge, one knows the immutable and true supreme person. So, in other words, that which is the summum bonum, that which is greater than anything that can be conceived, that which is indeed the absolute. If we wish to know that absolute, then this is the way in which we do this. This is the process that has been taught since the beginning of time. This is the process which is so efficacious to the point where even outside of the Vedic tradition, so many spiritual traditions try to follow at least an imitation of this process, where the idea is that, let's say even in Christianity, for example, which, we are not Christians, but still, let's say even in Christianity, even unbeknownst to them, they try to imitate this. They have their own scripture, the Bible. Well, they try to base their theological knowledge upon that. And then they have various traditions that they follow, etc., depending on the denomination that you're talking about. This idea, but no, if you, as an individual, in your heart, truly want to know God to the point where you know that nothing will stop you, you wish to know God at any cost, you have a yearning that is that great, this is how you do it. You find a guru who is legitimate, who is qualified, who is authentic. Again, looking at these qualities that we talk again, so many we could talk about in the future that are found in other Vedic verses. You find such an individual, you find a guru, and with humility, with sincerity, you go to that person and you surrender to them and you say, please teach me what you know, for you yourself are the personification of what I am seeking. This is how we know what? That true supreme person. God is the supreme person. God is, in the same way that we are persons, God also is a person. And the Mundaka Upanishad makes this very clear, as do all, actually, of the Vedic scriptures. So this is the path. This is the way in which we know God. Very good. Well, I rushed through that a little bit because of the fact that we had a little bit of a glitch. And we still have a nice amount of time for questions and answers. So with that, I am going to stop there. Thank you so much for listening to my very brief talk on these two verses, which, as you know, I've gone much more in depth into for hours, actually. But we'll stop there, and at this point, I would like to signal to everyone that if you have any questions, now would be certainly the time to ask those questions. And as always, let me apologize beforehand. I am not going to be able to get to every question. There are always too many. But I would indeed like to look at some questions now. So please feel free to ask, etc. Very good. All right, here's one question from Dao Wei, which I will answer, and I've answered this many, many times in the past. And that is, Sri Acharyaji, why do most followers of Dharma stop at vegetarianism when eggs, dairy farms treat animals horribly and leads to countless deaths? Isn't that indirectly killing, hurting, just like with meat? All right, very good question. And again, not to downplay your question in any way, but I've been asked this many, maybe at least 100 times already, and I've always given the answer to this. Several things to be said about this. First of all, yes, indeed, followers of Sanatana Dharma are what are called vegetarians. That is, we don't eat meat, fish, or eggs. We do, however, eat dairy products. That has been the case since the beginning of time, and that will continue to be the case. Not vegans. Followers. Very good. All right, I apologize once again. Somebody is trying to disrupt our live stream. Again, we did absolutely nothing on our end. And I do want to answer that question more in full, but before I do, I just have to make sure people can hear me. So people please just confirm that you can see and hear me again. I won't resume until I know for a fact that people can see and hear me. So if people can just please confirm that, I would very much appreciate it. All right, very good. Looks like we're back. All right, and again, I apologize about that. Nothing we did on our end whatsoever. We didn't even touch a thing, but someone is trying to disrupt our live stream, and for reasons that I and my close disciples, we understand why we are a threat to evil, even if others don't quite understand that just yet. So, continuing with vegetarianism. So yes, indeed, we are vegetarian, not vegan. Now, just several things to be said. The idea of factory farms, of course, you understand, is extremely recent, meaning roughly the last 50, 60 years or so, something like that. And when vegetarianism was first, animals were treated extremely, extremely humanely. Even when the cow stopped giving milk and was economically no longer viable for the farmer, the farmer never slaughtered the cow. On the contrary, they allowed the cow to just live out its life in the pasture as a retired cow until it finally died of natural causes. So this is a very recent thing. That's the first thing. Second thing is, it is indeed possible pretty easily for the vast majority of people in the world. It is extremely, I'm sorry, I just want to make sure that we're still connected. Looks like we are. Very good. It is very possible to get organic and cruelty-free dairy for the vast majority of individuals in the world. There might be a few places where some nations are just in such poverty that it's just not possible. But let's be honest about this. Most of the people, if you're watching this, you've got a computer, you've got some meat, living in essentially the modern world. You can go to pretty much any supermarket and get milk and cheese and yogurt, etc., indeed cruelty-free. At the very least, with just a little bit of research, you can certainly find farms that are near you. They are cruelty-free dairy farms. So truthfully, it's not a real argument. It is indeed true that the dairy industry as it exists today is extremely cruel. However, nothing forces us to buy dairy from that industry. You know, there are indeed alternatives. So, yes, that's what I would say. The modern dairy industry that is factory farming is indeed cruel. Boycott them. Boycott them. Doesn't mean that you have to stop consuming dairy itself altogether if you can get it from alternative sources that are indeed cruelty-free. So I would say, please do that instead. That's what we do. That's what I do. So let me go on just a little bit more. Let's see. All right, let me answer this question. It's actually a good question. I understand that it's probably a question that's inspired from what we talked about last time, and that was suicide. And the question is, Acharyaji, I apologize for the off-topic question. And again, no apologies are necessary. What if a person commits suicide but remembers the name of Vishnu while doing that? Does he become liberated or does he become a ghost? All right, good question. The truth of the matter is, the mental and emotional state of an individual such that they would commit suicide, they would not be thinking of the name of Vishnu. It's extremely, extremely unlikely. It would be akin to saying the person is committing suicide in an extremely peaceful and happy state. Not very likely. So the truth of the matter is, again, it's not likely that they would be thinking of the name of Vishnu to begin with. Theoretically, if they did indeed, then yes, most likely they would attain liberation and would not become a ghost. But again, it is almost impossible that they would be thinking of something not just so positive, but so transcendental as the name of God and suicide. That's simply a contradiction that wouldn't exist in reality. But again, if they did, yes, the name of Vishnu does indeed deliver liberation to an individual upon death. But it would be if you died in a very peaceful sort of way, either of natural causes or because you're ill and you know you're about to die and now you take shelter of the name of Narayana. Then certainly, if you could maintain your focused awareness upon the name of God as you are leaving your body, you will have liberation, indeed. Very good. Very nice. Let me answer this from Nina Shakti. Namaste, Acharyaji. And I assume you're asking, am I giving initiation at the moment? I am very interested in moving there and learning from you. Very good. Let me answer that. Yes, indeed. I am a guru. I am an acharya for really only one reason. And that is my guru told me to be a guru and an acharya in 1986 when I was in India. For those who don't know the story, and excuse me for a moment. For those who don't know the story, when I was a very young man in 1986, living in New York City at the time, I went to India for the second time it was, and I visited my guru's ashram in 1986. And while there, my guru indeed instructed me face to face, to my absolute and utter shock. He, in essence, it's a long story, but in essence, he said to me, in the same way that I am your guru, now you become guru. You go back to America and you teach them about Krishna. And he spoke to me somewhat in depth about this and again instructed me to be a guru. That is quite literally the only reason why I serve in this capacity. Otherwise, throughout my life previous to that, my goal was never to be a guru. My goal was to hopefully be a good disciple for the rest of my life. I felt that if I had the grace of God, maybe eventually someday I could qualify as a good disciple. But I never wanted to be a... Very good. And once again, I apologize. Someone apparently does not like what we are talking about and is trying to stop us. But again, it's nothing that we're doing on our end, I can assure you. We have people here who are IT absolute experts, and there's nothing wrong on our end. But to continue, to answer Nina Shakti's question, yes, I am indeed someone whose Vedic initiation, extremely authentic Vedic initiation to individuals, because I was ordered by my guru to do so. As far as moving here, not necessary. Rather, I have initiated disciples quite literally about the length and breadth of the world in many, 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 many nations of the world. In fact, just to give you a little hint, we reach approximately 140 nations of the world. And I have disciples and followers and students in many, many of these nations throughout literally the length and breadth of Europe, throughout all of North America, South America, Central America, India, much of Asia, Japan, etc., throughout Australia, New Zealand. So it's not necessary to move here in order to be initiated by me. Rather, if you truly are sincere, and this goes to anyone who is out there, not just Nina Shakti, but anyone out there, if you truly are sincere and you wish to take initiation and to truly approach a guru, etc., what I would say is learn from me as much as possible. Learn from these videos. Learn from the books. Read the books as much as possible. Contact us at Dharma Central. If you go there, there's a contact form by which you can contact us. Join our email list. Please definitely do that. Become a member of the ISDS as well, our movement, the International Sanatana Dharma Society. When you do that, actually, you will be receiving instructions that ordinary people don't, because when a person becomes a member of the ISDS, they have access to Q&A live streams that other people do not, where you can interact with me more on a one-on-one basis. And then little by little, as I get to know you as an individual more and more, and I am convinced of your sincerity, your true sincerity, etc., there will be an opportunity for initiation, certainly. So again, that is what I would recommend, is that if you truly sincerely would like to take initiation from me specifically, please feel free to do what I just said, and it will happen. It will happen. So with that, I would like to answer a few more questions. All right, this is an interesting question. Can we do meditation with an earplug? Now, I'm not entirely sure what you mean by that. If you specifically mean, for example, earbuds, where in doing your meditation you are listening to something else, something meditative or a mantra or something like that, let me say that is a vastly inferior second alternative to meditation. I know A lot of people do meditations like this, where they'll be listening to something, either some very peaceful music or even mantras or something like that, and they'll be seated and just kind of listening. That is certainly something that is a positive thing to do. Please don't get me wrong. However, it's second best. The truth is, the best way to do meditation is without any kind of artificial imposition like that of any sort whatsoever. You see, meditation is the most natural thing in the world. With meditation, all that you need is just yourself. You need a body and mind. You need the right circumstances, and you need to know to do proper meditation. That's all you need. And that being the case, the best way to do meditation is to simply sit in a very comfortable way. For myself, I sit in what's called Ardha Padmasana, that is half lotus. I used to be able to sit in full lotus at one time, but now I do half lotus. You can either on the floor or a meditation cushion. You want your back to be straight. You want to first focus on your breath for a minute or two just to quiet the mind. Interestingly, you should have a quiet mind before you do meditation. It's not the other way around, which is what 99% of people think. Oh, you do meditation to acquire a quiet mind. Oh, the meditation will give you a quieter mind. But first you want to quiet the mind, relax the body a little bit before you even do mantra meditation. Then, having listened to breath for a few minutes, you want to say the mantra out loud, audibly, with your mouth, listening with your ear. It has to be a living vibration. Very, very important. So with your eyes closed, very simply, you want to concentrate on this vibration. Om Namo Narayana, Om Namo Narayana, Om Namo Narayana. And like that, and just continuing, repeating Om Namo Narayana. This is the primary mantra that we do. You want to do this for really as long as you can, but let's say give yourself a certain set time, let's say 20 minutes. And then again, when you're done, then you simply sit there and listen to the breath for another 1 or 2 minutes, and your meditation is over. So again, I would not recommend listening or recording. That will be beneficial, but not as beneficial as doing actual living meditation. All right, we have a few more minutes. Very good. Let me answer this question because we only have a few minutes, because I try to keep these at an hour or so. And this is a question that I can very easily, and it's sad, it's unfortunate that I know my answer to this will be controversial, and it shouldn't be, because again, I do everything based on the scriptures, and the answer to this is found in the scriptures. But the question is from Dharma World Order: can a woman become a Diksha Guru or Acharya? Absolutely. And anyone who says otherwise has not studied the scriptures. That simple. I've actually written a book about this that gives all the scriptural references. It's called the Shakti Principle. All throughout history, including in the Vedic scriptures themselves, are indeed the names and descriptions of women who were gurus and acharyas. Indeed, there is even a term for a female acharya, not the wife of an acharya, mother of an acharya. This is there in the scriptures. We know their names. So some modern individuals, inspired by Abrahamism, sadly, inspired by Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, were treated as garbage. Unfortunately, some individuals who claim that they are gurus, but they are inspired by Abrahamism, they will say adamantly, no, there can be no such thing as a woman guru, woman acharya, and they are contradicting the scriptures. Again, you don't have to take my word for this. This is a small book. Get it when you have a chance. It's called the Shakti Principle, where I outline this very clearly. I give scriptural references. I quote the scriptures, etc., etc. I give the names of many of these legitimate, and we're not talking about women who claim to be gurus in the last 10 years. We're talking about literally their names are mentioned in the Puranas. Women who were gurus and acharyas. So yes, indeed, a woman can indeed be an acharya. And so much so, in fact, that for those individuals who do not know this, and I try to state this every so often in case, just to avoid any controversy for when I leave this planet, my primary successor, the individual who will be the next president and acharya of the International Sanatana Dharma Society when I am no longer here, is indeed a woman. One of my closest disciples, who I have absolutely controversial in any way. You'll understand that they are indeed correct. So that being the case, we're going to stop there because it is 5 o'clock my time. We've been speaking for an hour. Let me please thank you again for being here. Very, very much so. And again, as always, I need to apologize. It's impossible for me to get to all the questions because we're limited to an hour. We will do this again next week. We will try to do this every week. Hope it is this. Several things. Please feel free to visit our main website, dharmacentral.com. If you go to the description of this video, you'll see the exact URL for how to get there. You will find many resources there. Please feel free to join our email list. We have an email list, and if you join it, you will get announcements about the ISDS, about various things that we're doing, announcements of new that come out, new videos, events that we're having, etc., etc. So please go to dharmacentral.com and sign up for that email list. It's free. We're not going to spam you in any way. We never will sell that email list to anyone else. We will just send you announcements about the ISDS there. The other thing is, while you find yourself here, please subscribe. Please subscribe. I know every channel says that, but everything that we do truly is with the sole motivation of expressing truth to the world and teaching truth to individuals in such a way that they have peace and enlightenment. So it helps us tremendously if you will please subscribe to this channel as soon as you can. Do it right now if you can. And then finally, please help us to bring this message to as large an audience as is possible. Please share the URL of this video everywhere that you can, with friends, with family, all social media, Gab, Twitter, Facebook, etc., etc. Please share this video as much as possible, and not just this video, all the videos. While you find yourself here, please go through all of our older videos. Our older videos, it's not like other channels, where all the videos will be topical. Oh, if you don't hear them right now and the video is a month old, it no longer applies. No. You can look at our oldest video and it applies. Jaya Shriman Narayana. Jaya Gurudeva.